Hey guys, welcome back to my another video. On this video, we will be setting up the user routes for our Monstack series. I believe this is the episode 4, if I'm not wrong. So on this episode, we will be setting up the routes for the user. We will integrate that with a database so that we will have the functionality of registering the user and logging the user. So without further ado, let's get started on the video. So as usual, I have a VS Code on my left and Postman on my right. So on this tutorial, we'll be moving a little bit faster than we did on last episode, because on last episode, I wanted to go in depth while setting up the routes. But a lot of things that we're going to be doing on today's video is it's going to be the similar thing while setting up the routes and setting up the controllers. So that's why I don't want to make a video, like really long. So now the first thing that we need to do is, since we have already set up the to-dos route over here on index.js file, we will add the route for the login. The setup that we want to use is we want to do app.use, and we want to say rest/users. So this will deal with the user's data. So that's where we selected this route, and we're gonna import a route from the user's route, which we're going to create later on. We can just simply say user routes. So I want to copy that, come back here, and I want to import that. Equals to require, and it's gonna come from /. I'm gonna go to routes/users.routes.js. I don't think we need to do .js. Now, since we're trying to import this from here, I want to go to routes and create a new file called users.routes.js. Here, I'm going to add all of the routes that we need. So for the users route, we will just create 2 routes. So one is going to be to register the user, and the second one is going to be to log in functionality, and both are going to be a post request. So let's start doing that. So I'm going to import express to require express, and then the other thing that I need is a router. Is gonna come from express.router with the uppercase R. Now I want to have 2 routes, so I'm going to do router.post. Let me quickly copy this because we want to use the post request for our second route as well. Here, the route that we want to define is every time we hit rest/users, and if we are dealing with a register user, I want to route the user to register, just like that. And every time we hit that same route and we are dealing with login, I want to route the user to /login. And here I'm going to create a controller in a bit, so I'll name that as register user. And here the name of the controller would be login user. It's the same thing that we did for to-dos. Now let's import those controllers. I'm going to do const, and I want to copy this and this, put it right there. Oops, it didn't even copy it. Hold on. Select this. Alright, and over here we want to grab this from require // I want to go to controllers /users.controller. Alright, now since we don't have these on our controllers, let's go ahead and create those. I'm going to go to controller and create a new file called users.controller.js. Make sure I write that name correctly. So now this is the place where we're gonna set up all of our controller related logic, right? So for now, what we will be doing is let's just create a mock of routes, because let's not worry about database. Let's make sure like our routes are working as expected first. So I'm going to create two functions, which are going to be register user equals to, it's going to be a async function. It's going to have request and response. I'm gonna set it as error function. I'm just gonna say rest dot status of 200 and dot JSON, and I'm gonna send the message as this is register user. Let's save that one. Let's copy that, and this is gonna be for login user. I'm gonna copy that, paste it right there, and it's gonna say login user. Now in order to make a use of these, we need to export. I'm gonna do module dot exports equals to, it's gonna be a object. Select that, copy and paste it right there, and I want to put the comma right there. So now if everything that we did, if we don't mess up anything, so what should happen, we should be able to test these routes. So I want to go to index.js file, and on Postman on my right, I'm gonna go to http rest/todo. So it should be rest/users/register. So this should be the register route, and the route that we are trying to test is post. And if I send it, all right, did we even start the server? All right, router.use. Okay. Oh, we didn't export the export correctly on our routes file. So what we need to do here is module.exports equals to router, so that our index.js file knows where to grab the routes from. I think that was it. Now if I run this post request, I should see the message of saying a register user. So we're hitting the correct route. Now I'm going to copy this and open a new tab on Postman, and I'm going to use the post method, but instead of register, now I'm going to do login, because this is the next route. If I send it, now it says login user. So our routes are set up properly. So now we are done with routes. I will close that one. So the whatever we will put later on is going to be our controller function itself. Since I'm going to post this on GitHub in order to make tracking easier, I'm just going to commit this code. Commit. It's going to say set up basic routes for user. All right, now that is committed. Now the next thing to do is we're gonna start integrating our users with our database. So in order to do that, first thing we need to do is we need to set up our models like we did for Todo's model right here. So I'm going to create a new file called user model.js. Here I'm going to import the mongoose equals to require mongoose, and over here I'm going to define a schema for our user. So I can just simply do user schema equals to mongoose dot, I'm going to use this schema function from here, and as you know, it takes object where we can define our schema. And in order to make the timestamp simpler, I want to pass this second object here with time stamps as true. So as soon as we do that, so all of the only thing The reason why we did this here is so that we don't have to add the timestamps by ourselves manually. So once you set it up, it will add the created at and updated at field. And we did the same thing for our to-dos model too, if you followed my last episode. Now here, what we will define what are the things that we will add on our user schema. So the things that we are interested in is name, email address, and password. So I'm going to start by defining the name. It's going to be an object as well. It's going to be of type string, and for the required field, it's going to be a true. And if the name is not provided, we'll just say please add name. Alright, since we're going to be using the similar things for our email and password, I'm just going to simply copy paste it. Now here, instead of name, I'll just do email, and it's going to be of type string as well. It's going to be a required field, and if the email is not provided, I will just send the message saying please add email. And this email field will take one more extra field than that of name, which is going to be unique value. So I'm going to say unique of true. So all this is doing is we are making sure that we don't have duplicate emails. Let's say email 1 is already in our database as one of the user. We don't want the next user to log in with the same email. That's why we will add this unique property to it. Now email is done. Just do password here and just copy that and please add password. And I think that should be it in terms of our user schema. So this is the only thing that we need. Now the only thing left to do on this file is to export it. We're going to do module.exports equals to mongoose.model, and it takes two arguments. One is going to be the name, which is going to be user, and the second one is going to be the schema itself, user schema. Alright, now we should be good from our users model too. Now we can simply go back to, so this is the to-do model. I'm going to close that. I think we don't even need this user model anymore. I think we should be good. I will close that one as well. Alright, now let's bring that schema on our controller file so that we can start integrating with our database. I want to do const user equals to require, and we're going to do dot slash models slash user model. Alright, now since we imported this, we should have all of the functions that we need to interact with our database. Now let's start working on our register user itself. So whenever we are registering it, we're going to pass some data on the request body like we did on add to rows functionality over here. So the things that we need are going to be name, email, and password, like we discussed on our model, right? So we can destructure the requested body object, and we can grab name, email, password out of it, and this is going to come from request.body. And we're going to do a simple validation over here before start integrating with our database. We can just do simple if check if there is not name or if there is not email, or if there is not password, then let me get rid of this. I'll explain you guys in a second if you're confused. Let me just quickly write this response. If that is the case, then we want to send 400 requests, meaning client error. Please check the required fields. All right, the thing that we're doing over here is first we're grabbing the name, email, and password from the requested body, which is going to come from right here. And now what we are doing is we are making sure the name, email, and password exist. If there is something wrong with these fields, then we're just going to simply return the 400 request, like response saying, all right, you need to add the correct field. Because if we don't do it, it's going to mess up our like interaction with the database. That's why we want to be like super careful. Now if this validation is working correctly, now if I send this register user without any form data, I should get 400 back. Yeah, just like this. Now let's start adding some fields. So we are expecting name. I want to do John Doe, and email is going to be john@gmail.com, and password is going to be john1234. Just do 1 2 3. Now if I send this, I should get the register user because all of the fields are there. So if any of the fields are missing, we should get 400 back. So that's pretty cool. So right now we're just checking it against all of the fields and sending out the generic or general response code. What you could do is, if you want to enhance this feature, is you want to make sure you check it against each field and return the response code correctly. Let's say if the email was only missing, then you want to return please make sure you have a correct email, or like you have an email field on a body. But for this video, I think we should be fine doing this. All right, now once we check, like everything is there, now we are ready to interact with the database. I'm just kind of going to add a simple comment here: create a user. Not to create a user. First, what we need to do is before even creating a user, first we need to check if the we need to check if the email address that you're trying to register is already in database or not, because that's another validation that we want to do. So I'm going to do try catch block. Since we're interacting with database, it's going to say const user equals to await, because we are dealing with the database, it's going to be asynchronous. We can say user dot. There is a method on Mongoose called find1, where you can pass a field and Mongoose will try to find the data based on that field. So I'm going to do find1 method, and inside the object you can pass the field. So right now, since we're trying to check if the email does like if we already had that email in database or not, the only thing left to do is pass that email itself, which is coming from requested body. So hopefully what this will do is it will try to find the data based on the email address coming from the requested body. And here, if there is a user, meaning we found a user with the email coming from the requested body. If that's the case, then we need to send the 400 back, because we can't register this user because the email is already in use. So for the message, that what we can do is email already exists, just like that. Here I'm gonna add a comment: check if email already exists in database. All right, email already exists. Now let's say if we don't find the user with that particular email, then we are good to move forward on our like a register user action. So if that's the case, then we're gonna create a new user. So we're gonna create a new user, and we're gonna use the Mongoose method called create. So I can just simply do const new user equals to, we're gonna grab that user model dot, there's a function called create, and over here we can pass all of the fields that we are trying to create. For here I can just simply do we want to create the user with these particular fields, right? And I think if there is a new user, user.create, let me recap this. So it should create the user for us. And now the only thing left to do is we want to check if the new user is created or not. Based on that, we're going to send the response code. Else, if the new user is created, I'm just going to copy this. And instead of 200, I will send out 201, meaning the request has been accepted. And here, instead of just the message, what I want to do is I want to pass few fields. I want to pass ID, which is going to come from new user.id, and the second thing is name, new user.name, and the third thing is email itself, new user.email. And let's say if the new user was not created from here, we can just simply do 400 back here, and we can send out something like invalid user data. Let's do that here, and if we were able to catch some sort of error, then we can just do the same thing. I think we can just return the same thing, and we can get rid of this response right here. Alright, I think that should be it if I'm not wrong. So let's recap here. Here we are checking if the field exists or not from the request body. If it does not, then we are sending out 400 back. Now if this is not true, if we don't fall into this block, then we are doing try catch block so that we can do the database work. Here we're trying to find the user by email field. If that email already exists in the database, then we can't register a user, so we need to send out the 400 request back saying that email already exists in the database. If there is not the case, then we're going to create a new user with the name, email, and password provided by the user, and we are checking it against, let's say if the database work was successful, then we are sending out 200 accepted code with the following data field, which is ID, name, and email. And if there is something wrong with the database, we are just returning 400 saying invalid user data, and we are catching the error with 400 request code as well. Alright, now let's test this one out, the register route. I'm going to go here. I will provide the same user data from John, and let's send it. Alright, looks like it created, but it didn't return the correct field. Alright, so why is that? Let me see here. Const user.create. Let's check if it even added on the database or not. Okay, looks like there is a user with the John123, but why it didn't send out the data? It has to be here, no? Because we check the user here. Okay, maybe we didn't do await here. Okay, let's test this one out. So I'm going to get rid of this data from here. Now there should be nothing in the database, so we should be able to create the data with the same field. Let's try it. Okay, there you go. So that was it, because I missed the await keyword here. Now we are able to register the user. But if we go back to our database again, let's refresh this. So there is the email, name, and password, but if you notice, we are still seeing the password as John123, which is the plain text, right? And this is a really, really bad practice, because we can't store the password in plain text, so we need to hash it somehow. So now we will be working on that. All right. So before even hashing this, or I think let's just do it right now. I was thinking about like committing the changes, but I think we should be good. Let's just hash the password and we will commit the register user function. That's all. Alright, so how do we do it? We can store the password just like that, but the function that we'll be using, or the library that we'll be using to achieve this, is going to be bcrypt.js. So what you want to do now is go to your terminal and do npm I bcrypt bcrypt.js. Like it's the same word, and install that. Alright, I'm gonna close this, and over here on the controllers file, I will bring that bcrypt library. Bcrypt equals to require. It's gonna come from bcrypt.js itself. Alright, now the place where we wanna hash our password is right before we create a user, because right until here on line 13, right, we are not dealing with creating new database, right, new data. So the way we will achieve this hashing is we're going to use the bcrypt library to hash our password. Bcrypt is going to do some sort of magic, and it's going to change our plain text to random strings, and we will use that random string to create a new user rather than passing the plain password here on line 18. So that's what we will be using. So I'm going to come after like line 13 here and add a comment saying as the password before creating a user. So on bcrypt there is a term called salt, which is required before creating before running the hashing algorithm to get the hashed password, or like any sort of string. So what we need to do is we want to do const salt equals to await. So all of the bcrypt function or bcrypt methods that we will be using are going to be asynchronous, so we will have to use await, and we can use a bcrypt, and there is a function called gensalt. So here we can pass how many number of rounds we want to like generate this salt. So default is 10. So this is a standard too. You will see number 10 in like a lot of bcrypt use cases. So we will use the same thing here. And what I want to do is I want to do hashed password equals to await. We're going to use the bcrypt function again. Bcrypt dot, there is a function called hash, and this hash function takes two arguments. One is going to be the string or anything that you are trying to hash, and second one is going to be the salt itself. So we are trying to hash password, and we already have a salt defined. So that's pretty much it. So if you don't know what's going on over here, you don't even need to worry about it. Just make sure, just memorize. You need to do, like you need to generate a salt, and you need to pass the salt as second argument before hashing anything. These are the only two lines that you need to know. All right, now since we have a hashed password already, so rather than passing the password here, we want to pass the hashed password. So the reason I just didn't do hashed password over here is because I want to have a data field called password within my database, because if I just do this, it's just going to create a hash password colon whatever the hash password is. So but I want to have a data field called password specifically on my database. That's why I added that. All right, now if everything was good, we should be able to see the hashed password. Now let me go to my database and get rid of this, because there's no point of having that plain text password over there, and we're going to create a new user with the same value. We're going to use the same data field again. I'm going to send it. Alright, looks like it created one, and let's go to our database and refresh this. As you can see now on password, it's not storing John123, rather than it's storing some sort of hash value. So that's good. Now I think we're done with our register user too. Yep, I think we should be good. So let me comment this code real quick. And so finished register user. All right, now we're gonna move on to the login user functionality, which is right here. There's gonna be a lot of common things that we'll be doing for the login user as well, and there's gonna be like a few differences, but it should be fairly simple. So for the login user, like we're gonna require a few fields from the user data before we can proceed with the database interaction. Let's hit that login user here. It just says login user right now, but what we need is we're gonna need email and password from the user before we can make sure the user is logged in, right? So we're gonna have to grab that from requested body like we did over here. I'm gonna grab this piece of code, come back here. Now we don't need name to for the user to log in, so we can get rid of this name. So now, as soon as we save that, if we just hit this login route, we should get the message saying check the required field. So what we want to have is we want to have email, and I want to grab the John's email because he's the logged in user, and go back here, and password is John123. If we, okay, hold on, password is John123. Why it's saying 400 bad request? Oh, my bad. It should be on body, not the params. So that was totally my bad. I should have checked the field. All right, let's do it again. Email john@gmail.com, and password is gonna be John123. Send it. Okay, it says login user. That is good because we provided both of the fields. Let's see if we don't provide password, it's gonna say 400 bad requests. So I think we're good there. Now our validation is working as expected here. Now since we are doing the login use case, what we want to do first is, in order for the user to be successfully logged in, the first thing we want to check is if we have that user's email on our database. If it does, then we're good. We know that, all right, this email exists, meaning we don't have any issues with email. Now the next thing that we want to do after that is we want to make sure the password that the user just passed on the requested body, does that match with whatever we found the data on our database. So if that case is true, then we will let the user log into our system. Otherwise, we will just say, like password doesn't match, or there is some issue with email. So that's the plan. All right, now I will have a try catch block as well here. First I will need to check if the user exists in our database or not. So I will simply do user equals to await user dot find one. This is the same one that we used on the login user, and I'm going to use the email field to find that one. And over here I'm going to have a if statement. If there is a user or not. And for this if statement, I'm going to have an else as well to handle the failure scenario. Let's say if we don't find that email in our database, then we can just simply return 400 and say email does not exist. So that is the thing that we want to do if there is no user where we try to find with the emails, right? If that's not the case, then we can simply return the 400 back to the client saying, yeah, there is some sort of error on your email. Now let's think about it now. Let's say if the user does exist, then what we want to do is, now the next thing to check is the password itself. So I'm going to declare a const over here saying does password password, oops, sorry, I can't type. Does password match equals to, so how do we check if the user provided password matches the password that we have on database or not? So if you think about it carefully, user is going to provide the plain password, right? But the password that we have on database, if you look over here, is the hashed one. So how are we going to check it? Since we used bcrypt to hash our password, we're going to use bcrypt to compare the password coming from the user and the password that we have on the database. So we're going to use bcrypt to do that. All right, so I'm going to do await, and I'm going to use bcrypt again. Bcrypt dot, there is a function called compare. So basically what it does is it compares the hashed string with the unhashed ones, and it will return true if like both of those field matches, and it will return false if there is some issue, like matching those. So the things that we want to compare is password itself, and another one is user dot password, because that's the data field that we found, right, with the user provided email. So over here, we want to grab the password from this user and run it against the bcrypt compare function and try to match up with the password that was provided from requested body. So if that is the case, then meaning password is matching, then we can simply do if does password match. If the password is matching, then we're going to handle the login on line 47. And if there is an issue with password, then we can just simply say rest.400 and say, I think we can do password does not match. Does not match. And if the password is matching, then I think all we need to do is sending out the 200 back with the user's data. Let's go right there. All right, I think I copied a lot of unnecessary junk here. Let's copy that, go back here. Okay, rest.200.json. We just don't want to send the message, but rather we want to send the user's data like we did here. I'm going to copy that. And let's make sure I didn't name this as a new user, rather I named it as user, so I want to grab it from user itself. Alright, so if the password and we don't have issue with password and email, we're gonna send out the 200 with user status. So I don't think we need this. And if there is some sort of error, we're gonna catch that and send out the 400 back, saying please check required fields. Alright, so let me recap what's going on over here. First, we're grabbing the email and password from the user. We're checking if the email and password exist on the request body or not. If it's not, then we're sending out 400 back. Now, if everything is good until here, we're trying to interact with the database to make sure we have correct email and correct password for our individual user. So we're trying to find the user based on the email here on database. So if there is an email on our database, it will return an object of that user, and which is going to contain here, and we're checking if that user exists. Then we're gonna check the password again. If it does not, then we're sending out, like email does not exist in the system, you have to register, you can't just log in. And now here what we're doing is we're trying to compare the password, the user provided password, with what we have on the database. The reason to do so is because we have a hashed password on our database, and the password that's coming from the client or the user is not hashed. So we're going to have to use a bcrypt function called compare, and we're trying to compare, so it will return true if two passwords are matching. We're handling it on the if condition. If the password is not correct, then we are sending out password does not match message with the 400 status code. And if the password does match, then we're sending out the user's information as a part of the response. That's pretty much it. All right, now let's test it out. So let's see. Okay, let's start sending out by invalid email. All right, I'm gonna send that. It says email does not exist, so that's good because we send out the wrong email. Now let's provide the wrong password. It says password does not match. Okay, that's good. Now let's try to send out the regular, like all of the things should be good, and if we did everything correctly, we should be able to see our user. Yep, there you go. We got the 200 back saying these are the information that we got from the user. Yep, now what we can do is now we're able to register the user. We have a simple validation, although it's we're not doing a lot of work, but like this is going to be like good enough for you guys if you're especially new to backend or like Node.js as a whole. And we should be able to we have a capability to make sure the user is logged in too. Now I think that should be it for today's episode. On the next episode, what we will be doing is we will be looking into JSON Web Tokens, so that every time we create a user or like login the user, we will send out the JSON Web Token, and that with JSON Web Token is going to be the required field for all of our to-dos routes, all of these routes right here. So let's say if the user is not logged in, then and also if the user does not have JSON web tokens, our user won't be able to access any of these routes. We will make all of these routes private based on the JSON Web Token. So we will be doing that integration on our next episode. So if you guys find this video useful, please give a thumbs up to the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you guys on the next video. Thanks.